The Commanders lose on Christmas Eve in San Francisco, drop to 7-7-1, but still maintain control of their own destiny. All of that to come on the Locked On Commanders podcast. Merry Christmas, everyone.
You are Locked On Commanders, your daily podcast on the Washington Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Alrighty, Commanders fans, we welcome you aboard one and all. We are the Locked On Commanders podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, your daily podcast cover the Washington Commanders, free and available on all platforms, including YouTube and the WUSA 9 Plus app on your Roku or Amazon Fire Stick. And we thank you for making us your first listen and or view of the day. My partner, David Harrison, is out for this Christmas edition, and this will also extend into our Monday edition as we're a little bit sort of lighter on the schedule, but we'll have plenty of content for you this week with a lot going on, even though it's Christmas week and a lot of people are off from work and school and all that stuff. We will have you covered. Just trust us. But David will be back on the next episode of the Locked On Commanders podcast. We'll kind of be working separate this week while we each enjoy some time with family, and certainly hope you understand that. But check out David on Twitter at dharrison82, as well as si.com and FanNation's Commander Country. I'm Chris Russell, one half of the Russell and Medhurst Show on the Team 980 and the Odyssey app. With Pete Medhurst, you can hear us Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to noon Eastern time, or anytime live or on demand on the Odyssey app. We come to you on this, as we record this, Christmas Eve night. Again, this will serve as our post-game episode, and as it normally does on a Sunday into a Monday, our Monday episode, because with Sunday being the Christmas holiday, again, this will serve as our full Monday episode. And again, David will be back on the next episode. So the Commanders lose in San Francisco. That should not be a surprise to anyone, right? We knew that it was going to require a superhuman effort for the Commanders to get the job done, and they were not able to do so. And again, that should not be surprising. The 49ers are way, 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 way better. Again, this should not surprise anybody. 37-20, the final score in Santa Clara on Saturday afternoon. And the only thing that maybe was surprising was that this was a really tight game for much of three quarters, and then the 49ers kind of stepped on the gas pedal. And if you think about it, a 17-point win, right? And quite honestly, the Commanders' defense sort of kept them alive, gave them a shot, because they held the 49ers to a couple of field goals to start the fourth quarter. As a matter of fact, 3 field goals, 2 off of turnovers. And then the Commanders get a touchdown, which we'll get into in a sec. But then Christian McCaffrey finally hits pay dirt and finishes off the score. Really, probably not. The score probably not really indicative of the game because of that last touchdown by McCaffrey with just over 2 minutes left. But we'd be less than honest with you if we felt and told you that this was a blowout, because it wasn't. Going into the fourth quarter, it was a 21-14 lead for San Francisco. That's not a blowout, right? Now, again, things can happen, as they did. It's not a blowout, but it also didn't feel super close either. It's kind of this weird juxtaposition. We're going to get into all the nuts and bolts. But first, our big story is this. Carson Wentz has replaced Taylor Heinicke as currently the quarterback for the Washington Commanders. Now, we do not know moving forward, who will start the Cleveland Browns game on January 1st, 2 weeks to go in the regular season at FedEx Field? Ron Rivera, after Saturday night's game, said he'll make a decision when he reviews the tape, and he'll make it early. Now, that doesn't mean we'll know until probably Wednesday, but we could know Monday or Tuesday. Perhaps Monday when he meets with the media. I think that's when he's scheduled to meet with the media again. He will certainly be asked, and maybe he will reveal a decision. We just don't know. We just don't know at this point. I'm sure he wants to keep the Cleveland Browns guessing as much as he possibly can. But that's the big story. Carson Wentz replacing Taylor Heinicke. Wentz was 12 of 16, $123, one touchdown. It was to Curtis Samuel. It was a dart. It was a really good drive. Again, 12 of 16, 123, a touchdown, a 117.4 quarterback rating. Taylor Heinicke, if we're being honest, up until a consecutive 2-series turnover palooza, this was probably Heinicke's best played game. That's right. Even in a loss, this was Heinicke's best played game in my not so humble opinion. He was 13 of 18 for $166, 2 touchdowns and a pick, a 114.6 quarterback rating, and he very easily could have had another touchdown and probably 70 more yards thrown onto that, and could have had even more if another big play wasn't called back because of a penalty. And that was part of the problem on Saturday, is that penalties and or mistakes cost Taylor Heinicke and the Washington Commanders any realistic chance of winning this game. Interesting decisions from Ron Rivera, Scott Turner, and more. But again, the big story is Wentz replacing Heinicke, and Heinicke was not happy about it, as you can imagine. I don't believe he spoke to the media, or at least I didn't see that. I know Carson Wentz did. That's probably an indication. But I mean, listen, here's the deal. Taylor Heinicke, probably in all honesty, based on this game alone, did not deserve to be benched. But this is not a one-game evaluation. This is not a game-by-game necessarily evaluation. Correctly, Taylor Heinicke was not benched at halftime or anything like I worried about in this particular game coming in. I thought he would struggle again in the first half against a really good defense. He did not, even though the Commanders did not put up the kind of points that their play really warranted. They did put up a touchdown, right? That's better than most of Taylor Heinicke's first halves. The story and the problem becomes, again, in the latter portion of the third quarter and into the fourth quarter, you have 2 consecutive series. One, a forced fumble that turns into a turnover by Nick Bosa. That was the drive after the Terry McLaurin touchdown late in the third quarter that got Washington back into the game at 21-14 with a couple of minutes left to go in the third quarter. That turnover at right around the Washington 21 turned into a field goal for San Francisco. Again, not the end of the world, but certainly that started the slide, the precipitous slide, if you will, for Taylor Heinicke, because that made it 24-14 early in the fourth quarter. So again, this is third quarter turnover, late third quarter into the fourth quarter score. The very next series after the field goal, and now you're down 24-14, Taylor Heinicke throws an interception from the Washington 22, again, leading to a Robbie Gould 23-yard field goal. So once again, the defense bows their neck a little bit. It's 27-14. You're down 13 points. You still have a shot because it's still 12 minutes left to go in the game. But Ron Rivera had seen enough. At that point, after 2 consecutive turnovers and clearly not a great interception by any stretch, he says, that's enough. I'm putting in Carson Wentz. And Wentz again leads the Commanders ultimately on a 11-play, 82-yard drive over 351. A flip pass. The pass for the touchdown to Samuel was beautiful. I think a 7 route, if memory serves me correct. And they get the score, and you're thinking, okay, they're in this game. They're down 30-20. But they fail on the 2-point conversion because Wentz gets lit up. And by the way, Heinicke on that fumble turnover got lit up like a Christmas tree by Nick Bosa. And Samuel, or I should say after the Samuel touchdown, Wentz gets sacked. So they don't get the 2-point conversion, but they're within 10. And then the defense immediately gives up a drive to the 49ers with a couple of minutes left of, a somewhat short drive, just 33 yards after a horrific onside kick by Joey Sly. And an even more curious decision by Ron Rivera to onside kick it with 5.5 minutes left to go, again, down by 10. Now, he had to be thinking, I might not get this ball again if I kick it off to them, which is fine. But it was a curious decision, to say the least. Now, as we go through this game and as I break it down, there's a couple of more big plays and turning points that I think need to be addressed that we will get to along with our stock up, stock down when we return right here on this post-game edition of the Locked On Commanders podcast as the Commanders lose to the San Francisco 49ers 37-20 in Santa Clara, California, and dropped to 7-7-1, coming home in control of their destiny. Why? We will tell you coming up on the Locked On Commanders podcast. But first, guys, this episode is brought to us by our friends at Prize Picks and prizepicks.com. What is Prize Picks? Well, Prize Picks is daily fantasy made simple, easy, and fun. Here's what you do. You pick between 2 and 5 players, any sport, any league. They cover them all. NFL, college football, bowl games, NHL, NBA, all that. You pick between 2 and 5 players, and if they score more or less than their Prize Picks projection, you're going to win. You can win up to 10 times your money on any entry. No competing against other people. It's just you versus the projections available. Again, they cover each and every sport. Entries can be made in 60 seconds or less. Currently operational in over 30 states and in Canada. Here's what we want you to do. Download the Prize Picks app or go to prizepicks.com to sign up and play daily fantasy sports right now. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with the promo code Locked On. If you deposit $100, Prize Picks is going to give you $100. You deposit $50, you're going to get $50. Don't forget to enter the promo code Locked On at sign up for an instant deposit match up to $100. All right, thanks again for making the Locked On Commanders podcast your first listen and watch of the day. Now make the Locked On Sports Today podcast your second listen and view. Peter Bukowski bringing you the biggest stories from around the sports world in 20 minutes. Get the analysis and opinions before anyone else with our local and national experts and insiders. Locked On Sports Today podcast. It's available on YouTube and wherever you get your podcast. Before we get to stock up, stock down, I needed to go through 2 more key plays and sequences that hurt the Commanders. There's no ifs, ands, or buts, right? Ron Rivera gambled on 4th and 1 from his own 34-yard line in the third quarter with the Commanders down by 7. Now, certainly this was before the Terry McLaurin touchdown. He felt like the momentum needed to be kept, was slipping away a little bit. San Francisco scored on their first drive of the third quarter, right out of the halftime break. And it was a interesting gamble. It was a calculated gamble. I can't tell you that I love the gamble, though. Again, I was one of the very few that did not hammer Ron for being conservative last Sunday night. And I believe I'm right. That was from the Giants 34. This was from the Washington 34. And again, a 1-score game, middle of the third quarter. And to me, the problem was San Francisco had, again, just scored on your defense. Ron obviously recognizes that, but if you turn the ball over at your 34-ish and you don't make the first down, you're giving them 1/3 of the field, an easy opportunity to make it a 2-score game. And that's exactly what they did. They went under center, quarterback sneak. They got stuffed, and it led 2 plays later directly to a touchdown for George Kittle, 33 yards, right? Again, a 2-play, 34-yard drive, 51 seconds, running all over the place. Nobody really close to him. Boy, did this team miss Cameron Curl. We'll have a number on that coming up. But that was a very, very, very curious decision by Ron Rivera in that particular spot. Again, it made it from 14-7 to 21-7. I didn't love the call. I'm never going to agree with going for it on your own 34-ish yard line. But Dan Campbell has done it several times this year and been successful. Brandon Staley has been a mixed bag and with the Chargers and has done it a couple of times. He's had some success and he's had some big failures. I mean, coaches are doing this more. They are gambling more, period. Aren't we all gambling more? Try Bet Online. But anyway, you get the point. That made it from 14-7 to 21-7, and the Commanders were in trouble. Now, they answered right back, but still, they were in trouble. Early in the first half, the Commanders went on a long 17-play, 79-yard drive that got them first and goal at around the 5-yard line, and Taylor Heinicke was cooking on the drive. Couple of third and long conversions, one to McLaurin, one to Dotson, had another absolute dart. I think that was to Samuel to get them to the 5-yard line. Maybe it was Dotson again. I can't remember. Either way, then first and goal at the 5-yard line. Again, you're trailing at this point 7-0 after the Ray McLeod 71-yard end around touchdown. And you come up empty because on first and goal from the 5, you run, no gain. Then you get 4 down to the 1. Third and goal from the 1, no gain. Fourth and goal from the 1, no gain. Now, a lot of people have problems with the spread, the under center, the shotgun. Listen, that's a really good defense and a really talented front. And they couldn't get an inch. They couldn't get a half an inch. They couldn't get a couple of inches. They couldn't get a half a yard. 4 times they tried to run it. They did get 4 yards, 3.5 yards, whatever it was on second down. So I can't say they got nothing, but on 3 plays, they got nothing. Officially, no gain, including on third and fourth and goal from the 1 or less than the 1. You got to punch it in there, period. You cannot come away with no points. You've got to, I understand going for it. Again, that is a different argument. There, it makes sense to go for it. Where Ron Rivera also went for it from his own 34, again, to me, didn't make sense. Doesn't make sense. There, it makes sense. But you've got to come away with points when you get first and goal at the 5. And again, this team in the red zone and certainly in goal to go, struggling, and 4 straight runs. I would have loved to have seen, Taylor Heinicke, who was cooking on that drive, to be actually able to throw the football. We mentioned the defense, and it struggled at times. They gave up 37 points ultimately, right? Again, some of that off of short field, so on and so forth, but it's the most points allowed by the Commanders this season. According to Ben Standig of the Athletic Odyssey, DC, 37 again. That's 1 more point than week 2 against the Lions, 24 against the Eagles in week 3, 22, week 1 against the Jaguars. Notice a trend here. All of those games, or I should say the Jaguar game and the Lion game, Cam Curl missed. And he missed Saturday against the 49ers. Apparently, he was close to playing. Benjamin St. Juste got banged up again early in the game, came back in the game, but he just wasn't right. He was trying to fight through it. But 3 games that Cam Curl has missed, they've given up 37 points, 22 points, and it should have been more, and 36 points. That's a big loss for the Washington Commanders. There is no doubt about that. All right, quick, stock up, stock down for the Washington Commanders. Listen, it's hard to say and hard to sit here and tell you that Carson Wentz's stock is not up, right? Carson Wentz went 12-16, $123 in relief of Taylor Heinicke. And of course, Taylor Heinicke's stock down because he got benched, right? Because of the 2 turnovers. And again, it's not a 1-game evaluation. It's a big picture evaluation. I believe Wentz will be the starter on next Sunday. on New Year's Day against the Cleveland Browns. We'll see what Ron does. Stock up. Chase Young played almost 30 snaps. Looked good. Had some pass rush. Had a pass knockdown. Set the edge. Got good inside leverage. I think he was a factor. I think he looked more spry than I was expecting. As it was pointed out to me by a colleague of mine at 106.7 The Fan, Grant Paulson, well, he's been ready to go, or they have felt he was ready to go for 3 or 4 weeks. Yes, true. All of that true. Mentally, there's a lot of things going on behind the scenes. All of that is true. But for a dude who hadn't played football in 14 months, I thought Chase Young played A, way more than we were all expecting, and B, was much more of a contributor, quite honestly, than we were expecting, despite only having 2 tackles. Chase Young, again, had the pass knockdown, was a factor. You could just see it. You could see some juice coming out of Chase Young, and they needed it, quite honestly. They needed it. So stock up for Chase Young. In terms of stock down, again, we're not trying to be ridiculous here. I guess Derek Forrest had an interception in the key spot, but also blew a coverage on that first touchdown of the third quarter. So maybe kind of go half and half there. I don't know. In terms of stock down, I got to say, once again, the offensive line, they didn't open up a lot of holes. Not that anybody should have been expecting it. Brian Robinson only had 58 rushing yards, a 2.6 average. They allowed the hard sack fumble to Bosa. Of course, they contributed on the interception with pressure and really, again, could not sustain momentum in a couple of short yardage situations that we just went through. So stock down the entire offensive line. Leno, Norwell, Schweitzer. Schweitzer had a holding penalty that wiped out, I believe it was almost a 50-yard gain on double penalties, offsetting penalties, but it would have counted if Schweitzer didn't hold. That was another costly mistake. Trey Turner, not any good. Cornelius Lucas got beat on the Bosa sack. You get the point. Stock down on those guys. All right, we'll come back. And we'll wrap things up with our game balls. That's right. We still have to give them out. We still have to give them out despite a loss. And there are some bright spots moving forward right here on the Locked On Commanders podcast. Good to have you with us. Merry Christmas, everyone, as the Commanders lose to the 49ers in Santa Clara, California. Hey, guys, imagine you're hanging out with some friends and putting back a few drinks. Well, that's always a fun thing to do, right? This podcast is brought to you by our friends at NHTSA. A few become a few too many. As the evening comes to an end, people start to head out. You think of calling for a ride, right? And using a rideshare program. You live close, right? You can make it. No big deal. You won't fall asleep. No problems. Again, you won't get arrested. You won't get pulled over. You just want to be in your car. You want to get home. We understand. What are the odds you're going to get pulled over, right? And even so, what's going to happen? Well, here's what's going to happen. Your insurance could go way up. You could lose your license. You could lose your job. You could lose your freedom. And you might kill somebody while you're at it. Everyone knows the risks and should know the risks of driving drunk, especially during the holiday season. Results are often tragic and deadly. Don't do it. It's that simple. That's why police officers are out there right now looking for impaired drivers on our roads to get you off the road and to put you where you don't want to be, but where you deserve to be. So if you think you're okay to drive after a few drinks, think again. Play it safe. Plan a ride ahead. It only takes one mistake to change your life or someone else's forever. Drive sober or get pulled over. All right, we're wrapping up the Locked On Commanders podcast. Again, this will take us through the Monday edition. David will be back on the next episode. We'll kind of rotate here a little bit as we each spend time with our families. In terms of game balls for the Commanders, listen, you have to start with Jahan Dotson, right? I mean, I'm going to give him game ball number 3. Jahan Dotson was great again. 9 targets, 6 catches, 76 yards, a touchdown, a long of 25, and should have had more. Now, he did lose one in the sun on the very opening drive that could have gone for a 70-plus yard touchdown. So you might be saying, well, listen, am I going to kill a guy for losing a ball in the sun? It happens, right? I mean, it happens to all of us. Try driving in the sun. I do it every morning. It sucks. Okay. I have no idea sometimes how I make it to work, quite honestly, with the sun at the angle that it is. It's difficult. It's difficult to track a football. But Jahan Dotson, again, should have had a lot more, but as it was, had 9 targets, 6 catches, 76 yards, touchdown, third star of the game. Terry McLaurin had 2 back-to-back catches, one for 51 yards, and then a touchdown at the end of the third quarter in which Taylor Heinicke extended the play, kind of scrambled around, looked for fun. Terry McLaurin open at the last second. He just kept moving. He kept trying to locate himself for his for his quarterback. Great job by Heinicke. Great job by McLaurin. And again, preceded by a 51-yarder right before that. And Terry McLaurin only had 5 targets, which again is far too little. 4 catches, 77 yards, the touchdown. And that got the Commanders back into the game. We're going to give him the number 2 star. And the number 1 star for the Commanders on Saturday has to be Chase Young, right? Again, Chase Young, he played probably 3 times the amount of snaps than he was expected to. They said probably no more than 12. I didn't expect him to have much of an impact, largely going against Trent Williams. He did line up on the other side against Mike McGlinchey a little bit. He did have an impact. Despite the 2 tackles. Don't look into that. We will get you the whole numbers in terms of pressures and all that because he was a factor. He helped seal the edge. He helped push. Brock Purdy, I didn't think was great in this game. He was fine, but he helped push the pocket. Chase Young was a factor and played, again, a lot more. Now, one thing to look out for, because this is what happened with Curtis Samuel last year, week 4 in Atlanta. And again, just something to keep in mind. First game back, Curtis Samuel, remember he missed all of the offseason. Then he re-hurt himself right before the season opener. Then he goes on a 3-game IR, and then they can't wait to get him back out on the field. He's supposed to be on a snap count. He winds up playing about double because of injuries. In this particular game, not only did they not have Cam Curl, but James Smith-Williams got banged up. He was being evaluated for concussion. That led to, along with Chase's spryness and production, that led to Chase Young playing way more than they were hoping for him, expecting him, planning for him to play in game 1 for the first time in 14 months. So keep an eye on that. Keep an eye on the practice throughout the week. Keep an eye on how much he plays next week. And hopefully he has no fallback, no setback like Curtis Samuel did, quite honestly, after playing about double the amount of snaps as he did last year in Atlanta, week 4, because of injury, and then really never being the same again after that. Hopefully that isn't the case, but we do have to keep that in mind. But Chase Young gets the number 1 star for the Washington Commanders, who again dropped to 7-1 and still maintain control of their destiny. Come home for Deshaun Watson and the Cleveland Browns New Year's Day. Have the Dallas Cowboys 2 weeks from now, also at FedEx Field. We're not sure what date that is going to be on, either Saturday or Sunday, depending on playoff implications. Again, the Commanders in control of their own destiny. If they win out, again, they are right now in the playoffs. If they win out, they will make the playoffs. If they don't, obviously there's all sorts of scenarios. We'll go through some of the scenarios once they become official from the NFL later on in the week. But right now, that's what we have for you. The Commanders have to get a win against the Cleveland Browns. It is that simple, period. It is a must-win game at 7-1. All right, that is going to do it for us on this edition of the Locked On Commanders podcast. Thanks again for making LOC your first listen and watch of the day. Now make Locked On Sports Today your second listen and view. Again, with Peter Bukowski, the Locked On Sports Today podcast is available on YouTube, Odyssey, and wherever you get your podcast. If you want to hop in, it's 301-615-3577. And or Locked On Washington Commanders at gmail.com. LO.com or on Twitter, DM at LO Commanders. For David Harrison, who is covering the Washington Commanders for SI.com's FanNation and Commander Country, I'm Chris Russell, one half of the Russell and Medhurst Show on the Team 980 and the Odyssey app with Pete Medhurst. If you're out and about, please be safe. Be kind to one another. It's the Christmas season. Happy Hanukkah, Happy New Year, Happy Holidays, Kwanzaa, whatever you celebrate. Please be nice to one another. Please be patient on the roads. Please be safe driving around because there's a lot of ice and snow and cold, and bundle up and do all the right things. And here's to some holiday joy. And maybe one day we'll have a great football team to cover. Thank you for joining us right here on the Locked On Commanders podcast.